Here we have a white gold President. With a lot of history, it has in the past been the subject of a BBC news story and part of a scandal which was front-page news in the UK. It is definitely due some attention. The white gold is beginning to tarnish, and as such, it looks more like yellow gold in places. There's some dirt in the bracelet, and the movement is not running perfectly. There are some chips to the crystal, but the owner values originality and wants to keep it in place. We are happy to do this. Both the case and bracelet show signs of wear and scratching. We will lightly refinish these. This will also restore the appearance of the white gold. Rolex use a great quality alloy, so no rhodium plating is needed to restore the white gold appearance. Just a light polish. I mentioned the history of the watch. The owner told us that he acquired it at auction after a British cabinet minister was involved in a scandal. The Guardian newspaper reported on his alleged dealings with Saudi Arabia as a cabinet minister. He responded by taking the newspaper to court, alleging libel. According to the BBC archive, the resulting court case led to him being convicted of perjury and perverting the course of justice and sentenced to 18 months in prison. He was left bankrupt, and this Rolex was sold to help cover debts. The logo on the dial refers to SNAS Aviation, which seems to stand for Saudi National Air Services. The first job is to remove the bracelet and take the 3055 caliber movement out of the case, so the movement can be serviced whilst my colleague works on the case and bracelet. To remove a bracelet, I often use an old screwdriver with a blunt blade. I find that these fit in the slot of the spring bar much more securely than the spring bar tools which are available. I'm not a huge fan of spring bar tools. I have seen the prongs snap and cause damage. By using an old blade, I'm able to remove the bar easily with zero damage. I'm a great believer of trying different things and keeping what works. I would encourage anyone attempting to learn watchmaking to experiment with different tools and methods too. Obviously not with high value or rare watches though. I'm over 20 years into my career and have already found techniques I like through trial and error. As usual with Rolex movements, the rhodium looks bright and clean. Rhodium is from the platinum group of metals and is very resistant to tarnishing. This makes it very useful for plating movements as it will stay bright for decades. In our pre-service test, we can see that the watch is keeping good time. The amplitude is low, indicating friction and lack of oil in the movement. The biggest issue is the beat error. This is very far off center, indicating that the escapement is not properly set up and not running efficiently at all. Removing the beat error is a relatively simple job in this caliber. We unlock the adjuster by loosening a screw and then move the lever to align the escapement. We are looking for one continuous vertical line rather than two separate lines. A beat error of 0.01 is acceptable and will allow the escapement to run efficiently, self-starting when wound up. Once I'm satisfied that the beat error was caused by poor setup rather than an underlying fault in the escapement, I can begin cleaning the movement. In 18-karat gold watches, Rolex employed case clamps to secure the movement. The crown and stem are fully operational. To release them, we push a button on the movement, which raises the setting lever out of contact with the stem to allow their release. This allows a view of the dial. It is in excellent order. Careful handling of dials is important with any watch, but it is especially important when dealing with watches with rare dials like this. Any damage caused would not be reversible, as there would be no chance of sourcing a replacement part with the same logo. We remove the dial by loosening the securing screws and move it to the movement tray while we continue with the service. Now we switch focus to the rear of the movement, removing the screws which secure the automatic assembly. Here I'm removing the pallet bridge and pallet fork. The power has been removed from the mainspring before this stage. The barrel is removed. A replacement mainspring will be fitted to help raise the amplitude. Regulating a watch properly begins with good power coming from the mainspring. A watch can only run reliably when the amplitude is good. Here we see the calendar work, which is under the dial. The levers interact with the day and date stars to locate the wheels correctly. The last stage of stripping the watch is to remove the train bridge. This is essential to properly clean the pivots and jewels. The pivots should also be checked for wear and damage, and the jewels checked for cracks. There are lifting slots under the bridges to allow us to separate the bridges from the plates without damage. Now to the case and bracelet work. We will lightly refinish the gold to restore its white appearance. It won't be necessary to rhodium plate the parts as it is with some white gold jewellery. Rolex use very high quality alloys, which means as soon as it is polished, to remove the tarnish, the white gold appearance returns. You can certainly see the yellow tarnishing on the bracelet especially. As usual, we polish the center of the bracelet and mask it with heat-proof tape. We then apply a brushed finish to the outer part of the links, which creates the contrast. As the tape is removed, we can quickly see the improvement in appearance from even a slight refinish. The bracelet will now have its second ultrasonic clean to remove any leftover polish from the links. On to rebuilding the movement. The key here is to work as cleanly as possible with minimal handling, frequently blowing the movement with the bellows. It is essential that the correct types of oil are used in the right places and correct amounts. We must lubricate to decrease friction, but not over oil, which adds drag. When refitting the train bridge, care must be taken to locate all the pinions in the jewel holes before tightening the screws. You can check that the wheels and pinions all run true and have the correct clearance before tightening the retaining screws. Likewise, the pivots on either end of the pallet fork need to be correctly located before the bridge is fitted to avoid damage. Once the pallet bridge is refitted, we can add power to the train and check the proper depth of the pallet stones, checking the drop of the escape wheel teeth on the jewels. This is a great way to diagnose some hard-to-locate faults and ensure proper running, as well as checking the various solvents used in cleaning haven't loosened the shellac which secures the pallet stones. Apologies for putting my hand in front of the camera here. It is actually surprisingly difficult to film whilst working. Trying to turn the watch to the camera and not block the view adds an extra element to the work. At this point we can wind the watch. I like to put a little power in the mainspring before fitting the balance wheel. This way, as soon as the roller jewel is correctly located, we will know as the watch will begin to run. Immediately we can see an improvement in amplitude. Now it's time to oil the balance end stones. To do this, we open the inker block and separate the jewels inside. We use a fine escapement oil between the two and reassemble. This reduces the friction at this point. This is especially important at this end of the train, as the wheels and pinions have converted the high torque, low speed of the mainspring barrel to low torque, high speed. This means that it is very easy to stop the watch at this end of the train, so low friction is a must for good timekeeping. Now we are back to the dial side, rebuilding and lubricating the calendar work. When the day-date mechanism is all refitted, we reunited the watch with its dial. At this point we can double check the function of the keyless works and calendar mechanism. I also like to feel the friction of the cannon pinion at this point. In the past, some watchmakers would place a hair between the cannon pinion and the center wheel, rather than replace or properly tighten it when the friction was too loose. I have come across this several times, and it means that after cleaning, the fault of the loose cannon pinion rears its head and you have a problem to deal with that the customer didn't know existed before the service. At this point, I always like to double check the friction level still feels correct after cleaning before we fully rebuild the watch. By checking and fault finding as we work, we can cut down on warranty claims and future issues. We use a Horo Tech press to refit the glass. In a vintage watch like this, when a customer has requested to keep the parts in place, I replace the glass seal only and add a small bead of silicone to add an extra level of protection from water ingress. This is imperceptible from the outside, but it adds an extra level of peace of mind that the watch won't be full of water after we've serviced it. We introduced this a few years ago, especially in vintage bimetal watches, as we were noticing the bezels could often be knocked very slightly out of round over the years, while the harder steel case body kept its original shape. This leads to points where the gasket doesn't seal, and the watch fails the pressure test. Adding some silicone under the bezel of a vintage watch, which would otherwise never be waterproof again, is a good solution in my opinion, and it usually enables them to pass a pressure test. Here, I'm reattaching the case clamps, making sure all the screws are fully tightened so they don't work loose over time. With the watch serviced, the beat error has reoccurred, so we regulate again, this time also paying attention to the timekeeping. The watch is now in good running order, watertight and looking much fresher, whilst also maintaining originality as per the customer's wishes. We now test for a week in various positions to ensure accurate timekeeping and reliability. If you have watched to the end, thanks, and please like and subscribe. This helps by ensuring more people view the video, which allows us to make more content. We'll be back shortly with a vintage gold Longines. See you soon.